So now the so-and-sos started about, I think it's 12 years ago, when there was a notice in the church region bulletin saying that the Dr. Jesse Soto Center in Beausejour wanted some quilts for their Indigenous Training Center. So Joanne said to me, "Do you think we can do this?" Yeah, well, yeah, probably. Not just you and me, but we, the generic we. So Joanne stood up in church and said, "Okay, this is what we need to do. And all you need to do is to be able, to do this, you just need to be able to sew a straight line. And come to me after church and talk to me about it." So she had her clipboard, and oh my goodness, she had 18 ladies that came and signed up. Both of us were stunned. We were thinking, this won't even be a goer, but it was a goer, all right. Anyway, we gathered down here, and we had all sorts of donations of fabric, which was nice. And we had lots of ideas, which was even better. And we formed into groups of 2, and we made, I think it was 12 quilts. And then we took them to the Dr. Jesse Soto Center, and it was the day when they were graduating some of their candidates, and they were thrilled. And we were hosted to a pickerel dinner, which is kind of neat. But some people said, this has been such a good time. We've had so much fun doing this. Why are we going to stop now? So that's how so-and-so started. The beginning for me of quilting was actually the same as for the original quilters. So you've got lots of leftover pieces, and it just hurts to throw them away. Absolutely hurts to throw them away. So let's do something more practical with them. Let's sew them together and make them into something. So what's that something? Well, that something's a blanket. And when you put it with batting and backing, and then we call it a quilt. That's structurally what a quilt is. And so my very first shot at quilting was even before we came here to Canada, which was 30 plus years ago. And I'd been sewing for lots of different people, and I had all these neat pieces left over. And like, we're going to move. We're going to move across the ocean. This is a lot of scraps to take with you. So what did I do? Well, I looked in this book, and it said, you can cut these little pieces. So I decided I'd make what's called a grandmother's fan. And I remember cutting out of a piece of cardboard this shape, and I still have it, and it says on it, cut 100 and something or other of these. So I set to with all these neat fabrics, and I cut lots, more than the amount that it said. And then I started sewing them together in a fan. Well, then time sort of caught up with me, like, you really need to get with it and pack, Mary. Like, get with it. So they were put away for a while. And when we came here, I did get a quilt made out of them. And actually, in the end, there's 2 quilts that have been made out of them, which is kind of neat. One of them's in the quilt show this year. So there are a few of the original people here still, but thanks to the quilt shows that we put on every other year, we have attracted quite a few more members. And because Joanne and I are both members of Manitoba Prairie Quilters, we joined with them as what's called a satellite group. So if people who join Manitoba Prairie Quilters want to have a group of like-minded people in their area, then they contact MPQ and say, you know, is there a group that meets? And yes, there is. So we meet here. And so we've got quite a few people from there. So generally we have on our meetings that we come here, usually we have about 12 to 15 people. And interestingly, it's not always the same 12 to 15 people. So overall, we have between 20 and 25 that are active and come out.
It's not Irish or Scottish, something like that, because I've never seen that.
And I get a block of these a month.
Do you?
Yeah, I get one of these every month. And I've just let mine collect because I wanted to work at them this summer.
Yeah.
And so I'm tracing the templates now for the pictures. And I will have to iron the templates onto the fabric, cut it out, make the basic construction for the block and iron it onto the block, and sew it.
Now,
And I find it fun. My summer will be out at the cottage,
yeah.
and I take my sewing machine out there. I have it out there all summer. And I'm lucky enough that my stepdaughter does the cooking and a lot of the cleaning, so I can just sit and enjoy myself.
Alice Gibson. I have been quilting since 1998 when my husband for Christmas went out and bought me some beginning quilting tools because we were retiring, and he was afraid I was going to put him in the poorhouse by sewing clothes. Little did he know when he did that what kind of a lion he unleashed. It has become my passion, and I try to do as many different things as I can, and try and not make the same thing twice. I've always, for the last 20 years of my career, I worked with computers, either designing software for the ambulance service with Friend, or working on budgeting and that for the materials management department, and doing estimating for a manufacturing company in healthcare. So I've had a varied experience. That's what made my endeavor wanting to be combining both my likes, and that's sewing and computers. I had an embroidery sewing machine when my grandbabies came along and I needed to make them fancy things. So that piece was already there. I still use it to today. And I've also got a computerized long arm quilting machine that I share with my next door neighbor. And so we're well equipped to do all sorts of things. The quilting design, which you see here, is either free patterns from the internet or patterns in magazines that I've liked, and I scan them into the computer and design around that on my embroidery software. Then I can take it over and put it on my quilting software and fit it into where I want to put it. So that's that process. The process for this quilt, it's called a resonance quilt. And what you do is you pick a pattern that you like, no matter what size it is, and then you size the pieces on the wall with a piece of paper and a old technology of the projector. Now they are doing it online, or not online, but on the computer, and you just scale it. So it makes it a lot easier. You just set your points and scale it out. So, but this one was actually designed on the wall. Again, I wouldn't try that at this point in my life. I don't have a projector. Okay. The design software for quilting, it's called EQ8, and it's probably one of the few good softwares that you can get. You can start with the quilt base, put in however many blocks you want, going in whatever direction you want, put on any number of borders or pieces that you want, sashings that you want in the inside. You start from that, then you add your blocks, then you add what kind of design you want to put in your sashings and on your borders. Then you print all your pieces out, and off you go and start sewing. It'll tell you the amount of fabric you need for each section as well. So it's not like the old days where you had to sit with and scribe it all out. So, how's that?
That is just excellent, much more than I thought. But tell me, do you have an end point for this quilt? Is it destined for someone in your family?
It's going to hang on a wall in my house.
Yes.
At the moment.
Yeah. So it's your personal work of art.
The designer of this quilt is Ricky Timms. He's a very famous quilter.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
He makes, I think the last show that he had a competition quilt in
Yes?
was $500,000. Was what he made on it.
Astounding. Wow.
But that's the artistry that goes into it.
Let me be impertinent and ask you, what is a quilt?
What is a quilt?
Yeah.
It's 3 layers of fabric. It's the top, which is this.
Yes.
It's the back, which is this.
Right.
And the batting that goes in the middle.
Very nice.
And other than that, it's not a quilt. You can use 2 pieces if you're doing fiber art. And there's various ways and means of putting fiber arts together. You know, you can use bark or piece of tree, or like, it's very, very creative. And those are just as valuable as what some of these designers are in quilts.
Well, I gather there's no end of fascination in your life with this.
And no time to spare. Thank you.
Most of the people that come here are not members of Trinity. There are a few that are members of Good Shepherd, and there are lots that come that I think this is probably the only time they get into a church.
Yes.
But that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Because this is not a church group, really.
Yeah.
It's a fellowship group, and that's different. It's a fellowship group that's held in the church.
Yes.
And certainly everybody here has lots of fellowship.
Yes.
And we help each other, as you've seen today.
Yes.
You know, you can come with all sorts of questions and say, hey, what can I do about this? Or, what's the matter with this? Or, isn't this fantastic?
Yeah.
You know, now that I've finished it.
Yeah.
And very often people have seen you struggling over it for a few weeks. And finally it's done. So there's lots of, I like to see it as outreach. We are part of the outreach committee. And so outreach is our aim. I know there are lots of quilt groups that, you know, they just quilt and that's it. We generally have a group or a cause, if you want to call it that we support. So over the years, we've done the Dr. Jesse Soto Center. We made 100 and something or other quilts for the NICU unit one year. And they're quite specific with their requirements. They have to be square, they have to be all cotton, and they have a size requirement. But our ladies just loved that. And we made NICU quilts like mad. And that was really fun. And we've also made quilts for Healthy Start, for the Toba Center, which deals with abused children. We went with the Manitoba Prairie Quilters in their 215 quilt initiative. So after the 215 unmarked graves were discovered, they wanted, and actually it was over the summer because the graves were discovered in May, I think it was, and in September they wanted 215 quilts. Out of those 215 quilts, there were 35 that came from this group, which isn't bad, you know, and it was over the summer too, so that was pretty good. Just recently we've sent quilts up to what's called the Northern Beginnings group in Iqaluit. And they support mums and babies up in the north. And they make bundles for the babies and for the mums. The biggest stumbling block with that one is the fact that to get it up there is pretty expensive. We were able to get some of the Canada Post labels in October, so that helped quite a bit, but other than that, it costs about $50 to send a big box that's 11 kilograms, so that's fairly expensive just for a little group. However, since then I've discovered that the Nunavut mothers have a group that actually meet in Winnipeg because they come down to Winnipeg for the birth of their babies. And they meet every week. So actually next time we gather, we'll have a meeting and we'll talk about that because that's the same sort of idea as sending them up to Iqaluit, but you don't have to pay for postage. Just have to run downtown once a month. So I think that will work pretty well. This group really likes making baby quilts. They're small, and so you don't generally have to send them out to somebody to get quilted because they're so huge, so they won't fit on your own machine. And they're fun to make, and they always look so cute.
I'm working on what's called a star log cabin, and it's basically you have a star block in the center, and then you put strips around it, and it comes to be about 16 inches square, and it's just a lap quilt, just a small one for cuddling under when you're having a read of a good book or your cup of tea or a good movie, so that's what it's for.
What is the significance of a lap quilt versus a big
A bed quilt, well, a lap quilt is, if you think of a child carrying their blankie around, that's the adult version of a lap quilt. We carry our blankies too, yeah. So that's our, it's small, compact, but just enough to cover you up and keep you cozy and warm.
Now, is this a personal construction, or have you got a gift in mind?
I'm not sure yet. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. That's what we quilters do. We kind of go, well, we don't know. We just like the process of cutting apart a big piece of fabric that people say, why would you cut it apart? And then we like to put it back together again. Like I said earlier, we're the carpenters of fabric, so yeah.
Just show me your stitchery then.
Okay.
So I'm just sewing my seam here, which is, we're not in the metric yet here. We work with inches, so we're doing 1/4 inch seams, hopefully.
It's fascinating how precise you could be with your stitchery.
Oh, yeah. There's some very talented individuals out there in the quilting world that can really, you wonder where they come up with the ideas and stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of neat. It's your artistic outlet.
I'm just putting the antenna on these butterflies, and in a way it is cheating. I really should do it by hand embroidery. But it's a quilt that's for a little 4-year-old girl who just wanted a butterfly quilt for her new double bed. And it has to have her name on it as well, because her brother has a quilt with his name on it.
Oh, how sweet.
So I found the butterfly block pattern, and I didn't like just all over butterflies. So I've added the dragonfly panels that you see over there. And the last step is going to be, of course, borders around it. But making butterflies became pretty monotonous. I sort of thought this child had better appreciate butterflies.
Next week is Manitoba Prairie Quilters show and competition, yes. I've been looking after the registration of the quilts, and we've got 206 quilts that will be hung in the main hall. Out of those, there's, I think, about 150 that are being judged, which is a pretty large number, actually. But when you consider there hasn't been a show for 5 years, I guess some of them have been waiting. And that's fair enough, too. So the judges assess the quilts and give the person who's entering the quilt gets a written evaluation of their quilt. And there are ribbons for second, third that are given for the good quilts, you know, for the ones that are assessed as outstanding and such. And actually with that, there are often cash prizes too, which is kind of neat. Then there's also, the judges take apparently all of the first rated quilts in all of the categories and choose what they call a best of show. And then there are other awards for hand workmanship, machine workmanship, use of color, all of that sort of thing. So there's quite a few awards as well. In addition, there's an outreach, if you want to call it, outreach section to the show every year, where there's a group that is supported by the show. And this year it's Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And Sleep in Heavenly Peace, actually it started in the States, and there is a Winnipeg chapter, and they make beds for children who don't have beds. You know, we think of a bed as, you know, yeah, that's just part of the furniture in your house, and you just jump into bed every night. But some children don't have a bed. They either sleep on the floor, just on the floor, or they sleep on a mattress on the floor if they're lucky. And some of them might have their own pillow, but very often the bed is shared. So this is quite, you know, quite sad. So this group makes the beds, and they take them to the home, and they actually set them up in the home. They have mattresses, pillows, all of that. Some of them are either donated or subsidized. And often the wood for making the bed is subsidized through the various areas that, you know, sell wood in the city. However, this is where MPQ comes in. We make quilts. And quilts of a specific size are for sleep in heavenly peace. And so not only do the children get a bed, sheets, blankets, but they get a handmade quilt as well that comes from some MPQ member. So that's pretty neat. So at the show there are what's called challenge quilts, and the challenge was to take just a package of fabric and make it into a quilt, usually a wall hanging size, and they're hung up and they're for silent auction. And the money that's made from the silent auction goes as cash to Sleep in Heavenly Peace for their work. So every year the committee chooses a different cause that will be supported by the show and by these various challenge quilts.
Wow, what a wonderful story, Mary. And but it's also the story of the leadership and the perseverance that you and Joanne and other people who've led this group show.
Yeah, we try and keep it going, that's for sure, but you know, we're not singular in it. We've got lots of people who come out and support us, and certainly we wouldn't be able to make all these donations of quilts to these various places without lots of our members and their work. Because, you know, when we put out a request for quilts, they come into my house sort of by the bucket load. And that's great. That's great. We've done other things, like during COVID we were asked about making masks, and we made lots and lots of masks. One of our members is associated with One Just Sleep and One Just City and West Broadway, and we were asked a couple of years ago to make hats, and we made lots and lots of fleece, you know, beanies. And so lots of people were out there somewhere wearing these nice warm fleece beanies.
Well, I thank you. This is just a wonderful story, and I appreciate the deep thought that goes into all this. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and many, many thanks to you for coming out and, you know, taking pictures and all of that. I'm really pleased with how many people have come out so that you can have a neat story.
Right.